what if we've been measuring success completely backward?
How do you mean?
Well, what if the greatest measure of an organization's vitality isn't actually how many people it gathers, but how many it successfully sends out?
Ah, okay. That is a radical thought.
It is, isn't it? Especially today, when we often celebrate growth through, big buildings and static numbers.
Right. And it immediately challenges the deepest internal incentives of almost every organization we know. Churches, nonprofits, even businesses aiming for high growth.
Exactly. The whole system is usually geared towards keeping people, preserving things, maintaining what's already been built.
Retention.
Absolutely. So our mission today in this deep dive is really about shifting that whole way of thinking. We've looked at a stack of resources, all focused on identity, structure, movement, and we're getting straight to the core idea. Achieving real, lasting impact means pivoting, completely moving from a maintenance vision to a multiplication vision.
Yeah, and for you listening, it's important to note, while a lot of the sources we looked at use faith-based groups as examples, the principles underneath about identity, how you use resources, how you scale, they're pretty universal.
Definitely.
We're exploring this core belief that real organizational growth, it needs to be exponential, not just static. And that takes a total rethink, a re-architecture of the mission itself.
So the tension.
The core tension we're wrestling with here is that classic conflict. Preservation versus propagation, keeping versus sending.
Preservation versus propagation. That tension feels constant, doesn't it? Okay, so let's start with the diagnosis. Why did these sources argue that just preserving, just maintaining, isn't really cutting it anymore?
Well, it's because many established organizations, even vibrant, stable ones, they're standing at a crossroads, a critical one.
They have the resources, maybe.
Exactly. They often have resources, history, stability, but they lack that forward-facing momentum. The sources are pretty blunt. Without a vision that stretches beyond just maintaining the status quo, these places risk becoming...
Well, the phrase used is monuments to past victories.
Oof. Monuments.
Instead of movements for future transformation.
Yeah.
The problem isn't usually a lack of comfort. It's often a lack of a contagious vision, one that actually inspires people to take risks, to be sent.
That monument versus movement idea, that's powerful. So we're not just talking strategy tweaks here. This goes deeper, right, to the root of identity.
It absolutely does, yeah. The sources make a really profound claim here.
Yeah.
Multiplication isn't just like an optional program you add on or a clever marketing angle. It's ontology. It's about who the organization is at its core, what it's meant to be.
Okay, ontology. Explain that a bit more. For organizations coming from, say, a generative tradition, like the faith-based ones in the sources, this conviction is often rooted in this pattern of overflow, of relational extension. Ideas like be fruitful and multiply or go and make disciples. It's baked in.
And this is where that organizational analogy you mentioned comes in. It really helps make it concrete.
It does. The sources ask you to picture two fundamental identities that shape everything an organization does.
Two identities, okay.
Right. Are you building a fortress focused on security, systems, programs, all designed to preserve the institution, protect it from threats, keep things stable inside?
The fortress makes sense.
And the other?
Or are you planting a seed? Think about a seed. Its very nature is to be sown, to break open, and then to reproduce wherever it lands. It's inherently generative, mobile, outward-focused.
Fortress versus seed, and if you lean into that seed identity, the whole operational question flips, doesn't it?
Completely. You stop asking, how do we keep people inside these walls?
And you start asking, how do we actually raise up reproducing leaders? How do we equip and send people out? And that shift, that rewiring, it touches everything. How you train people, what you prioritize in your budget, leadership development, all of it.
Okay, that's a huge shift. Changing that central question. It's one thing to say, okay, we want a multiplying identity, but structure, as you said, structure matters. So what are the core frameworks the sources suggest to actually support this kind of exponential growth?
Right, because you can't just wish yourself into being generative. You need the scaffolding. The sources point to a robust, outward-facing vision needing to rest on four sort of integrated pillars.
4 pillars, okay. What are they?
These pillars give you the architecture for sustained reproduction. They make sure the vision isn't just a flash in the pan. First, theological centering, that's the why. Anchoring the identity in that sending generative nature we talked about.
Got it, the why.
Second, identity formation. That's the who. Shifting the narrative internally. So people aren't just members or attendees.
Consumer.
Right. Not just consumers. They see themselves as missionaries or sent people, contributors, active agents.
Okay, why and who? What about the more practical side, the implementation?
That brings us to the third pillar, habitual practices. This is the how, developing simple, reproducible rhythms and actions that actually translate that identity into everyday stuff. Not just ideas, but habits.
And the fourth.
Fourth, and this is crucial, structural alignment. The what's. Making sure your tangible structures, especially your budget and your leadership metrics, what you measure and reward, actually favor and encourage sending and planting, not just holding on to everything.
This really does sound like it needs incredible simplicity, doesn't it? Because if everything depends on highly trained, expensive staff running complex programs, well, that's just not reproducible by everyday people.
Precisely. That is spot on, which is why the sources emphasize the simple, scalable, kind of three-step tactical spine, something any group, big or small, resource-rich or not, can adopt for reproduction.
3 steps.
Yeah. Invite, invest, release.
Invite, invest, release. Okay, let's break that down. What does the invest part look like? That seems key for raising those reproducing leaders.
It really is central. So invite is about creating a really simple, low-barrier way for people to connect. A first step group, an initial gathering, something easy to join.
Makes sense. Easy entry.
But the real transformation happens in the invest phase. This is where you use something like an apprenticeship model. Intimate, hands-on formation.
Apprenticeship, like one-on-one or small groups.
Could be either, but the key is intentionality. Maybe it's a commitment to, say, 6 weekly meetings focused not just on learning stuff, but on skill transfer. It's less about downloading content and more about coaching people, showing them how to do the work themselves.
Okay, coaching for skill transfer.
Yeah.
Then comes the crucial step, release.
Yes. And this needs to be just as intentional, creating easy, low-friction pathways for people to actually go out and plant new micro-communities, start new initiatives, new branches, whatever it is.
Low friction is key there.
Absolutely. And this is vital. You don't just send them out with, a pat on the back. Release includes dedicated coaching and support for those new leaders, especially during that critical first, say, 90 days. You walk alongside them through that initial stress.
So that whole system, invite, invest, release, it has to be portable. Simplicity is really the engine.
Totally. And the sources give some great practical tools for this, like the 60-minute reproducible meeting template.
Ah, yes. Tell us about that.
It's brilliant because it strips away all the complexity. Just 5 simple parts, a quick check-in, looking at scripture or some core text, practicing a specific skill, prayer or reflection, and then planning the next steps, the send-off.
And the point is?
The point is it's designed so anyone can lead it. You don't need special training or tons of resources. If it takes a PhD to run your basic meeting, forget multiplication. It won't happen.
Right. Keep it simple, keep it reproducible. Which connects to that idea of the multiplication manifesto, that identity statement.
Exactly. You need something short, memorable, contagious. An identity statement everyone knows and can repeat. Like, we are ascending people who make leaders who make leaders. Something like that.
Simple, clear, repeatable.
Simplicity isn't just nice to have here, it's actually the engine. It's what makes the whole thing portable and allows it to reproduce naturally.
I want to loop back to something you said earlier, the universal application. This isn't just for churches or faith groups. This logic seems like it could apply anywhere, right? Professional settings, too.
Oh, absolutely. Think about a nonprofit. Instead of just counting how many clients their main staff served,
Their metric changes.
yeah, they could shift to measuring how many clients they trained to become peer trainers, structuring programs so graduates actually coach the next group. Success becomes about the reproducibility of the program, not just staff activity.
Or in a business.
Same idea. Instead of just looking at net profit, maybe a key metric becomes how many internal managers were developed and successfully spun off to lead new teams or divisions. It's about generating leadership capacity.
Okay, shifting metrics like that makes sense on paper. But let's get real. The sources have to talk about the friction, the pushback, because multiplication sounds great. Until you realize it means sending away your best people, your top resources. How do the sources suggest overcoming that fear, that really immediate, kind of terrifying fear of losing out?
That is, without a doubt, the single biggest barrier. You're right to hone in on it. Maintenance feels safe, right? It's seductive because it offers tangible rewards. You can point to the balanced budget, the nice facilities. It feels responsible.
Yeah, safe. responsible.
But the real engine driving that resistance, it's the fear of loss. The sources call it loss anxiety.
Loss anxiety, that captures it. The fear that sending out those amazing people or that chunk of the budget will leave the core group weaker, smaller, less stable. How do you counter that? It feels so ingrained.
It takes attacking it from two angles: structural and pastoral, or maybe cultural remedies.
Okay, structural first.
Structurally, one really practical tool is the succession rule, basically. No key leader leaves, especially one vital to a core function, until they've formally trained an apprentice or there's a solid transition plan ready to go.
Build the bench first.
Exactly. You have to build that deep bench before you send your star players off to start the new team. Makes sense, right?
It does. Okay, so that's structural. What about the emotional side? The feeling of loss when good people leave.
That's where formal rituals come in. The sources strongly recommend things like public commissioning ceremonies.
Commissioning them, why is that so important?
Because it reframes the whole event. It shifts the narrative. Absence isn't seen as just a painful subtraction, a loss. It becomes a sacred moment, something celebrated, an act of obedience, of fruitfulness.
So you're making the departure a positive affirmation of the mission.
Precisely. You sanctify it, turn it into a positive milestone that reinforces that core sending identity you're trying to build.
Makes sense. Now, the sources also warn about pitfalls, right? Ways this multiplication focus can get derailed.
Yes, definitely. Two big ones stand out. First is over-centralization.
How does that kill multiplication?
It kills it because it makes every local unit totally dependent on the main office, the HQ, for everything. Decisions, resources, permissions. It stifles local initiative. The fix, as we talked about, is designing for portability, making resources simple enough for volunteers to run locally without needing HQ's blessing for every little thing.
Decentralize and empower.
Right. The second big pitfall is confusing multiplication with just growth for growth's sake, wanting bigger numbers without substance.
Yeah. Quantity over quality.
Exactly. You have to define multiplication as qualitative reproduction. Are you reproducing the character, the mission, the core DNA? Are you making disciples who make disciples, leaders who make leaders, not just boosting attendance figures?
That qualitative piece is key. We have a great little story from the sources here that kind of pulls this all together. The one about the mid-sized church.
Oh, yeah, the youth pastor one?
Right. They reluctantly funded their departing youth pastor to start a campus ministry.
Reluctantly is the key word. They did it with immense fear. They were convinced they were just bleeding money and losing their best staff member. They basically said, okay, 1 year of funding, that's it. And the congregation was pretty sad about him leaving.
Yeah.
But then the unexpected happened. The campus ministry actually worked. It took root. And within just 2 years, it had birthed 3 new self-sustaining house churches in the city.
Wow. Okay. Multiplication in action.
And here's the kicker. Some of those newly trained second-generation leaders from those house churches, they eventually got sent back to the original sending church. They came back with fresh skills, new energy, new vision.
So the initial perceived loss
became the engine for developing sustainable new leadership for the whole system. It completely flipped the script on loss anxiety.
That's such a powerful illustration of that counterintuitive reality, which leads perfectly to the final, really practical point. If you want movement, you can't keep measuring maintenance. You need a different dashboard.
Absolutely critical. You nailed it. Organizations have to shift from tracking those, vanity metrics, the lagging indicators, things like just raw attendance numbers or total giving.
Why lagging?
Because they tell you about the past. They don't predict the future. You need to track leading indicators, metrics that actually predict reproduction, that reward the kind of risk-taking that aligns with a sending mission. Your dashboard shapes your behavior. If it rewards retention, you'll focus on retention.
Okay, so let's build that movement dashboard for the listener right now. Instead of just counting heads or dollars, what should they actually be tracking?
You want metrics that measure generative activity, not just passive consumption. So things like...
Number one,
how many new one-on-one discipleship or mentoring relationships started this month?
okay, active investment.
2, how many apprenticeship cohorts were launched and what's their completion rate? Are people actually finishing the training?
Good one. 3,
3, how many second-generation leaders have been trained? And by that, I mean leaders who have now trained someone else. That's real multiplication.
leaders making leaders. Got it. Anything else?
And 4, what's the sustainment rate of those new microgroups or ministry plans? Are they still going after 6 months, after 12 months? That shows help.
Okay, that's a very different set of metrics. And I imagine this demands real honesty when it comes to money, right?
Yeah.
Resource allocation has to follow.
You have to put your money where your manifesto is.
Yes.
This is that structural alignment pillar we talked about, but in action. Budgeting.
How you test that?
The sources suggest applying the 10-20% test. Look at your discretionary funds, the money you have some choice over. Are you allocating at least 10, maybe 20% of that directly to these forward-facing sending initiatives? Training new leaders, microgrants for pilot projects, maybe stipends for those being sent out?
Because the budget shows what you truly value.
Exactly. Your budget is a theological statement. It's a practical statement about your real priorities, not just your stated ones.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into rethinking organizational structure and purpose. The core insight, it seems, is that the choice isn't just between good or bad ways of managing things.
Oh, it's deeper.
It's between building like a museum of faith, something beautifully preserved, admired from a distance, or building an engine of blessing, something that actively scatters life and multiplies influence out into the world.
That's a great way to put it. Stewardship that doesn't include sending, that doesn't involve propagation, it risks becoming just a shrine to itself, a beautiful collection of resources, maybe, but one that eventually just stagnates.
It runs out of steam.
Yeah. The pattern we see modeled, especially in those generative traditions, seems to be receive, be formed, and then courageously send. Understanding that abundance isn't just for hoarding, it's meant to flow outwards. We need to shift from being collectors of success to being more like gardeners, planting successful cuttings everywhere we can.
Gardeners, not just curators. Love that. Okay, so this leaves us with the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Something that builds on this whole idea of legacy and generative leadership. When future generations look back on your leadership, on your organization, will they remember a place that maintained itself really well? Or will they remember one that multiplied boldly?